Hello, YouTube. This is UMills03. So we're at lesson 2 in our set of YouTube videos regarding the Java programming language, where I've said now once or twice that I was going to start a set of YouTube videos where I would basically convey my understanding of Java programming fundamentals. In lesson 0, which is attached in the description, we figured out that BlueJ is an integrated development environment, a software application that we can use to write code. It's very simple to do a Google search to download BlueJ, to download the type that you need for your operating system. In lesson 1, which I also have a link to in the description, we learned about how to create a class, which is basically a Java file. And we went ahead and created this class within our project. And we talked about two different types of print statements. So we said that if we do System.out.println, then we'll basically be able to print something and then print a new line. But if we just say System.out.print, then something is just printed and then we're just immediately to the right of it, like whatever, then we could print something immediately next to it rather than going to the next line necessarily. We also talked about comments, and we said that we could either have a single line comment, which starts with 2 forward slashes, or we could have a multiple line comment, which starts with a forward slash and then a star. And then at that point, you can just press return every time you want to have another line within your multiple line comment. In this video, we'll talk about arithmetic expressions. We've already talked about how to print things like his shirt is red, or my cookie's getting stale, or that ice cream melted pretty fast. But what if we want to print the result of 13 plus 26? What if we didn't know the result of that arithmetic and we wanted Java to help us with a math problem like that? We can use Java to perform arithmetic expressions, and I'll be showing you in this video how some of that works. What we'll start with is something very simple called addition. Addition is when we add two numbers together. So for example, if we say something like System.out.println of 6 plus 10, the Java compiler is capable of handling arithmetic expressions and performing this math for us. It has its own calculator in it essentially, and so what we could do is make a little comment. We could make a single line comment here to the right of this print statement and write the output that we would expect. So for this program, we would expect the output, the console, to print the number 16. So what we're going to do is we're going to press compile at the top left, and then we can press close sort of in the top middle, and we come back to our project. And then again, in order to run a program in Java, you need to right click or control click that class. A drop down menu appears. You're going to press void main string args. You're going to see these empty curly braces, and then go ahead and press OK in the bottom right. And indeed, we verify that 6 plus 10 is indeed 16. Of course, you can run this for subtraction as well. So, you can have a couple of different things here. So 72 minus 8, we expect 64, right? System.out.println. You can have multiplication. What if we did 5 times 100? Of course, we would expect 500 here. And then, of course, we can have division. So what if we had something like 300 divided by 30? And then, of course, there are 10 full groups of 30 in the number 300. So try to memorize these numbers: 64, 510, and then we can run the program again by compiling. Make sure that you compile and then press close, and then right click on the class, see the drop down menu, press void main string args, press OK, and indeed we get those three numbers that we were predicting: 64, 510. There is something to say about division in Java. So for example, we understand fractions and decimals, and we know that if there are, 4 pizzas and 8 friends that you invite to your party, then everyone's going to get half a pizza, right? Everyone's going to get 4 slices. They're going to get 50% of a pizza. But if you're talking about division in Java, Java does perfect integer division. So if you say something like 3 divided by 6, Java sees this and says, take the number 3. How many full groups of the number 6 are there in the number 3? The answer is 0. 6 doesn't go into 3 a perfect number of times. So 3 divided by 6 doesn't print 0.5, doesn't print 1 over 2, it prints 0, because there are 0 full groups of 6 in the number 3. You could try another one. What about 92 divided by 10? Well, you would think that's 9.2, but this is an integer division. So we just say there are 9 full groups of 10 in the number 90. In order to understand this principle, we have to think about something in Java called data types. And in the next video, we'll be talking about variables, and we'll say more about data types. But for now, you have to understand that there's a difference between an integer and a decimal number, a floating point number in Java. And so basically, if you want to do perfect division with floating point numbers with decimal numbers, you need to make one of the numbers a decimal. So earlier we saw that 3 divided by 6 is 0. But if we do 1 divided by 4.0, you know, if you said 1 over 4, you would just get 0 because there's 0 full groups of 4 in the number 1. But if you say 1 divided by 4.0, we can do the perfect division. So it says, oh, well, 1 divided by 1, 1 over 4, it's 0.25. So if you convert at least one, it could be both of them. You could do both of them, 1.0 over 4.0, and that would also give you 0.25. Or you could do 1.0 over 4, okay? But at least one of them. Java prefers doubles over integers. So if you say something like 3.0 plus 4.0, technically you would say, oh, that's 7.0, which is just 7. But Java prefers doubles. It prefers floating point numbers, decimal numbers, over integers. So if you have an arithmetic expression with a floating point number, a decimal number in it, the result that you're going to get is going to be parsed. It's going to be treated as a decimal. Okay, so 3.0, even if you just said 3.0 plus 4, this wouldn't just be 7, it would be 7.0 because you're talking about a decimal number. This 4 automatically gets converted to a decimal. Okay, so that's why, that's sort of how division works in Java, is that you need to make sure that one of the numbers is a decimal. That's a floating point number. Even if it's a perfect division, right? So even if you said 100.0 divided by 10, and you would say, well, that's a perfect division. There are exactly 10 groups of 10 in the number 100, but this would still be 10.0 because the number that it starts with, is a floating point number. So that's what we get here, the 10.0. Okay. So that's essentially what we have going on here. What else can we do? We can also do something called modular arithmetic. So what if we want to know a remainder? What if we say, hey, I know that there's not a perfect division between 78 and 25. But what if I want to know the remainder when I try taking full groups of 25 out of 78? What's going to be left over? So for example, maybe I have 75 students in a class and I can fill up 25 kids in each classroom. So how many kids are going to be the problem children, the oddballs, right? And so here we would expect a remainder of 3, right? Because we can get 75 kids into classrooms. And then the question would be what to do with 76 and 77 and 78. And indeed, that's why we get the 3 here. That's called modular. So this looks like a percent sign, but you can't think of it as a percent. It's not saying 78% of 25 or anything like that. It's saying if I do a division, 78 divided by 25, what is the remainder that I would get? And obviously, you can reason that if the first number is smaller than the second number, then you just get the first number, right? So 82, there's no full groups of 109 in 82. So what would be the remainder? Well, you would just get 0 groups plus the 82 left over. And so that's sort of a math thing, but hopefully you're familiar with that. So those are sort of arithmetic expressions. So you need to be familiar with the fact that Java can do addition, subtraction, and multiplication. You need to understand that Java does integer-based division, but then if you convert one of the numbers to a decimal number, to a floating point number, then it is able to handle perfect division that we would think of in a mathematical sense. And then finally, we talked about modular arithmetic, so the idea that you can have remainders. So I guess as a homework assignment, we could think about a problem like this. So what if we had, 10 mod 6, and the other thing I guess we need to say is order of operations. Okay, so what if you have something like this? Okay, so if you were reading this from left to right, if you were a first or second grader, you would say, well, 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 times 6 is 30. 30 minus 4 is 26, and 26 times 3 is, what is that, 78? And I would be pretty impressed if a second grader could do that multiplication in their head. But let's say they can't, 78. But that's a problem because Java actually does respect order of operations. So you can pull out your 4th grade math textbook when you were 9 or 10 years old and you got comfortable with doing the multiplication before the adding and subtracting. So it's not 5 times 6 at the beginning. It would be 3 plus 12, okay? And then you see the 4 times 3 at the end, right? So 4 times 3 is 12. So we're talking about 3 plus 12 minus 12. So instead of 78, we're just going to get 3. And we can verify that. You can verify that by running the code, and you see the 3 here. We get the 3 in the terminal window. So the things that you need to understand, we could write that in a multiple line comment. So by now, you know what an IDE is, how to download, a program to write Java. How to, printing statements. So the difference now between System.out.print and System.out.println, and you can go review that in the previous video. You know the difference between single and multiple line comments. You know basic arithmetic expressions. So we have adding, subtracting, multiplying, and division. You know the difference between integer versus floating point division and how Java prefers doubles, which are, decimal numbers, which we'll be talking more about in the next video. And you also understand modular arithmetic. So this was the idea with the remainder. And finally, we talked about order of operations. Okay, order of operations. So multiply and divide before adding and subtracting, just as you would expect from a mathematical perspective. So thanks for watching, and in the next video we'll be talking about variables, so trying to basically store important values in Java so that we can use them throughout the execution of our code. From umills03, thanks for watching, and please subscribe.